Alright guys, welcome to my preview and predictions for tonight's WWE SummerSlam pay-per-view. Before we get started, here's the results to last month's Money in the Bank predictions, which was won by I'm a Paul Heyman guy, who scored a perfect 8 out of 8 correct results. So if you fancy submitting predictions for SummerSlam, you can do so using the link in the description. So let's get started. First we'll have the SummerSlam kickoff, which features the US Championship match between Dean Ambrose and Rob Van Dam, in a match that I'm really looking forward to, and it appears that after SmackDown, Mark Henry and The Big Show might be ringside to counter any involvement from Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. RVD is on fire since his return, and he's put on some of the best matches week in, week out, so I'm expecting another classic here with Ambrose, especially with the pre-show being online for an hour, as it gives them plenty of time to put on a good match, even though a lot of that hour will be used to promote main event matches and show footage from Access. As for who wins, I'm going with Ambrose as I'm a big fan of his, and with him going up against RVD, you have the chance to put him over against a big established name, which I think is important for his growth and also for the US Championship, which he said on Raw is the championship that everybody runs from, as having Ambrose continue to hold it restores credibility to the belt. But I'd love to see RVD get another shot next month, as I think that this is a rivalry that can really work out well for both men. Moving on to the main card, and we'll have the Divas match between Natalya and Brie, which comes around thanks to WWE's new reality show Total Divas, which after I caught up with it earlier this week, I have to admit I really enjoyed it. It was really cool being able to see some of the backstage footage, even if some of it was scripted, but like I'm doing here, I think the main focus here isn't actually on the match, it's more on a chance to talk about and promote Total Divas at SummerSlam. Anyway, back to the match, and I think we'll see Natalya get the win here, potentially with the help of her friends in Cameron, Naomi and possibly Maria Menounos, who she's actually teaming with at Access for a match against Nikki Bella and Eva Marie, who's making her debut in the ring. Up next we'll have Dolph Ziggler teaming up with Caitlyn to take on his former colleagues Big E and AJ Lee in a match that I can see Dolph and Caitlyn winning, as AJ has gone over Caitlyn for a few pay-per-views now, so seeing as there's no title on the line here, I think it's about time that Caitlyn got the win and stuck it to AJ by celebrating with Dolph. Next comes the grudge match between Damien Sandow and Cody Rhodes in another match that I'm looking forward to, which is something that I wouldn't have said prior to Money in the Bank, but WWE did a fantastic job in the way that they booked that match, which resulted in both Sandow and Rhodes coming out of it as stars, and ever since then they've continued to keep that momentum going, and they've been given a lot of time on TV, which has led to some good segments. One of the best segments of course being Cody Rhodes throwing the Money in the Bank briefcase into the Gulf of Mexico, which resulted in Sandow debuting the new chocolate briefcase, which really does look like chocolate. But it suits Sandow's style, and considering they give him his own briefcase design, I would take that as an indication that he'll be holding on to the contract for quite a while. In terms of who wins, I'm going with Cody to get the win and pick up some retribution, but I think this will be a pretty close match. Now for the Ring of Fire match between Bray Wyatt and Kane, which is basically just an Inferno match with pinfalls, and was set up as a means of stopping the other members of the Wyatt family from interfering. The best thing here for me is that Kane is back to being a monster, as I enjoyed him in Team Hell No, but I always think he works better when he goes back to his roots. As for Wyatt, I've enjoyed his debut, but from the vignettes that aired leading up to it, I think I was kind of expecting more. Nevertheless, he has a really interesting character and his in-ring promos are really good, so he's someone that I'm really looking to see how he develops. So who wins here? I'm going to follow the buzzards and go with Bray Wyatt, although I'm not too sure how this will play out, but I am expecting something special to happen at the conclusion of the match, so we'll have to wait and see. Now for the World Heavyweight Championship match that sees Christian get that one more title match that he wanted and deserves, going one-on-one with Alberto Del Rio, who following his attack on Ricardo Rodriguez won't have his former manager at ringside, at least not to help him out, as I could still see Ricardo getting involved to potentially cost Del Rio the match, but seeing as the attack was only done last week and the way in which Del Rio took out Ricardo with the steel steps, I think he may be off TV for a while. Meanwhile, someone who knows all about being out of action, Christian, whose career has stuttered the last few years due to various injuries, gets what's being labelled as one more match, which I really hope it's not just one more match, as I'd love to see Christian get the win here and once again become the world champion, going on to have a long championship run, as I think that he's someone that's really deserving of it. But for whatever reason, WWE have never really given him that opportunity. Maybe that's down to the fact that he left to join TNA, but that should be something that's all forgotten now, as he's one of the best workers to have, both in the ring and on the mic, plus there's his popularity with the fans. So I'm going with Christian for the win. Like I said, I think he's someone that really does deserve it, as highlighted by the video package that aired this week on Raw of all his past accomplishments, so I'll be marking out if Christian wins tonight. Next we'll have the Best taking on the Beast, CM Punk versus Brock Lesnar in what I think is just a regular match. I don't think there's been any stipulation added for no disqualification, which is kind of a surprise for me as all of Brock's other matches since his return have had that included, so it should mean that we'll see Brock wrestling more this time around, and he couldn't have a better opponent to work his first real wrestling match since his return than CM Punk. However, I have a feeling that we might see a slight MMA style this match, as Brock's obviously got his UFC background and Punk is a UFC fan who has done some MMA training, so they could work that into the match, especially after they mentioned Punk's MMA training in a recent promo. Then there's also the Heyman factor, as he'll no doubt be at ringside to get involved, especially after it was Heyman that kicked off this feud when he cost CM Punk the chance to win the Money in the Bank ladder match, leading to Brock returning and taking out Punk on Raw. Speaking of Brock, I was impressed with his tape promo that he had on Smackdown. It's definitely one of the best that I've seen him cut, and it did a good job of putting over the Best versus the Beast theme, with Lesnar listing his accomplishments and putting Punk down, touting him as the underdog in the match, which is kind of obvious when you look at the size and power advantage, but then you've also got the equaliser that's seen Punk attack Brock on Raw with the camera, meaning Brock won't be portrayed as being 100% for the match. So the winner, I think it'll be a close call, but I'm going to go with Lesnar, as like I said, I expect an MMA feel this match and a lot of submissions, but I can see Brock coming out on top. Finally, we'll have the WWE Championship match between John Cena and Daniel Bryan, the champ versus the Beard, and yet again it's another great match on this year's card that I'm looking forward to. And it's about time that we see Daniel Bryan get a championship match, as ever since losing to Sheamus at WrestleMania, his popularity has just soared to the point that as much as WWE might want to ignore it, they can't anymore because he's by far the most popular guy on the roster, judging by the crowd reaction when his music hits. I also like the way that this has been booked, with WWE making a point that Bryan isn't exactly what they expect from a champion, which is another of these storylines that blurs the lines between reality and fiction, as it's well known that smaller guys don't usually get the recognition that the larger guys do, because they don't fit that mold that Vince has generally looked for. But these last few years, with the emergence of guys like CM Punk and Daniel Bryan, times are changing and it sends out a good message that anyone can accomplish their dreams if they work hard at it, something that Daniel Bryan has done his entire wrestling career while wrestling all around the world, a point that was brought up on the Miz TV segment on Raw when he went on to call Cena a parody. Speaking of Miz TV, I thought this week's segment was absolutely amazing. I love the fact that Bryan put across the fact that he's a wrestler first and foremost, and that he'd still be wrestling on the indie circuit if his time in WWE ended tomorrow. But to give credit to Cena, who I usually find a little repetitive on the mic, I think he cut one of his finest promos in response. For some reason it felt like being called a parody really hit home, and it brought out his defensive side, allowing him to get off a lot of real frustration with his feelings towards the fans that boo him each week, pointing that he is too a wrestler and that he's done it week in week out for the last 12 years, and that's something that you can't knock Cena for his commitment, dedication, and the fact that he's a role model for young kids and he does send out a positive message. Back to the match itself though, and another factor in this match is the special guest referee Triple H, who, let's face it, guest referee matches never go smoothly, and I can definitely see Vince coming down to ringside to get involved. Plus, if history repeats itself, it's worth pointing out that Triple H previously worked as the special guest referee in the WWE Championship match at SummerSlam in 2011, when CM Punk retained the title against John Cena, only to then have Alberto Del Rio cash in the briefcase and leave as the WWE Champion. So with Randy Orton not having a match on the card and constantly appearing to remind both Cena and Bryan that he can cash in at any time, as well as delivering a few unsuspecting RKOs, I think there's a good chance that we'll see Orton cash in regardless of who wins. As for who does win, I'm going with Cena as my prediction, but I can see it going down two ways. The first, I could see Cena winning and then losing the championship to Randy Orton, cashing in Money in the Bank. Secondly, the option that I would prefer to see would be Daniel Bryan winning the championship, then defeating Orton after cashing in Money in the Bank, as I think that would do a great job at shedding the image of Bryan not being a credible champion if he goes over both Cena and Orton in the same night. That, however, is one of my dream scenarios, so I don't know how likely that outcome would be. Anyway, that's my preview and predictions for SummerSlam, so let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you want to enter your predictions to the Smacktalks Prediction League, then I'll leave the link in the video description. So have fun, enjoy SummerSlam, and best of luck with your predictions.